And good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. You are joining us for a live edition of the Christian Anime Podcast. I hope you're having a lovely evening to our American friends. And I think that's also those are the only people who I would say hello to. Mate, I don't want to hear that I was late. I already okay, so I did wake up. I did wake up an hour ago. And then I spent all but 45 minutes just doom scrolling on YouTube Shorts. And you know what? At some point I'm just gonna remove YouTube Shorts from my I'm just gonna delete the YouTube app from my thing. It's just terrible. It's a terrible thing. Because I definitely could have been on here on time, and I um, could have actually gotten something in early as well. So yeah, yeah. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all doing well. It's a very whoops, and I just realized that look at that very professional stream. We've even got the bits on the the end there. Very very professional. So. In recent times, it seems that I've caused some controversy. Um, it's yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I'll just give you guys some context regarding this, and then like my real actual position on the thing is. So, recently, the United Kingdom passed what was called an online safety bill. And the whole point of it is well, I don't know what the point of it is, right? Like, I haven't actually read the bill. I don't, that's it, right? Which is, I don't know what's in the bill. I haven't actually read it. All I did know about it was people were complaining about it on Twitter because it was resulting in the banning of corn. And that's my key concern here, right? So of course, like I think now that I've learned more about the online safety bill and how like it's actually being used, like it's being used to censor protests and it's being used to enforce digital ID upon like sites like Twitter and Discord. Like I don't agree with those parts of the bill, right? I'm specifically arguing for the policy proposal that we should be banning corn. That's what I'm specifically arguing in favor of. So that's why it's like in light of the that's the tweet I made, right? In light of the newly passed online safety bill in the UK, I wanted to say that banning corn is good, actually, right? And that's what I'm like. I'm not arguing in favor of the bill. I'm not arguing against the bill, right? In that sense, all I'm arguing in favor of is the concept that we should be banning corn, and that's the discussion that I want to have. Now, of course, like I think all throughout the comments, like it's there are discussions about whether the bill is good or whether like that's not that wasn't the point of me posting this, right? And I know a lot of people now this is what this is one of the main arguments that people brought up. But this bill isn't going to be used to ban corn. It's going to be used to ban other things like censor protests and censor all sorts of things. Okay, cool. I can agree that's bad. It's just that the discussion we're having today, and I want to make this as clear as possible, right? The discussion that I want to have is regarding whether or not we should be banning corn, because that's the discussion that we should have. We must restrict freedom for real, for real. We should restrict freedom. So yeah. Pacion, as a person who's against the First Amendment here in America, I love it when countries restrict freedom. This isn't a joke. Yeah, I gotta say, actually, considering there's a lot of Americans here, I think this is the thing, right? Which is, I appreciate it. I appreciate the American desire to, want to protect freedom and yada 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 yada. But I think that this is just a fact of like how different countries operate, right? Here in Australia, right? Like I come from a Australian background, and I also have like I'm also Filipino, right? Um, and that means like I have that's why it's not the end of the world to me, or it's not like a crazy thing for me when when the government does something big, right? Especially here in Australia, like people call it authoritarian. The way that I think social democrats or people who are in favor of government control would put it is like where the government has a certain role. It should be trying to it should be using that role in order to benefit the people. It should be using that role also to restrict the people in order to protect them as well. There's a and one of the I know I'm jumping around different topics here all over the place, but I just want to make it clear for those of you who are Christians, like Christians shouldn't be in favor of anarchy. Does not bear the sword in vain. There's a particular passage in Romans 13 where St. Paul writes about this specifically, about the governing authorities. Here we go. Whoops, let's not get the Timu ad. I don't, let's not open up the Timu ad. You know what, let's just get Bible Hub instead. While I'm looking that up, I hope you guys are all doing well on this. I think it's a Sunday evening for our American friends. It is Monday morning for me, and I am doing absolutely fantastic. All right, so this is what St. Paul writes about the government, right? Romans 13. Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which is from God. The authorities that exist have been appointed by God. Consequently, whoever resists authority is opposing what God has set in place, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. But do you want to be unafraid of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will have his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not carry the sword in vain. He is God's servant, an agent of retribution to the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to authority, not only to avoid punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. This is why you have to pay taxes. For the authorities are God's servants who devote themselves to their work. Pay everyone what you owe him. Taxes to him, taxes are due. Revenue to him, revenue is due. Respect to him, respect is due. Honor to him, honor is due. Now, let's. I'm just going to keep this up, right? Because I know some of you will be like, oh, okay. Does that mean God appointed North Korea? Like, did God appoint Kim Jong-un to be the governing authority of North Korea? Now, this is how. This is part of my interpretation of the passage, right? Which is like, obviously, like this is Paul writing at a time when the Roman government was actively persecuting Christianity, right? Yet, while in that context where the Roman government is actually killing Christians for their faith, where the Roman government is crucifying tons of Christians, where the Roman government, like a few years later, like the Roman government's gonna put Christians is going to put Christians and burn them like candles, or put them in the Colosseum to fight the lions. Yet, in spite of all of those things, Paul is writing here that we must submit to the governing authorities, right? This is the Christian position, right? It's not that, like, of course, God is able to work through non-Christians in government, right? Like, we can see this through who the current president of the United States is, right? God, even though Donald Trump isn't a Christian, he certainly isn't, yet God is still working through him to still enact his will, right? To still enact good laws and good governance and all of those sorts of things. Now, let's come back to this idea of like, does God then institute every single authority? Now, why is it then that God? How is it then that God actually instituted someone like Kim Jong-un to be the ruling authority of North Korea? Now, the way I would argue this is that he's not a good, like, he's not the ultimate authority that should be in control of North Korea, right? Like, he's not a good authority of North Korea. However, the alternative to Kim Jong-un, the alternative to the North Korean government is anarchy. And anarchy is way more like, anarchy is actually a punishment that's often it's a punishment from God upon a people, because there is no ruling authority to provide order and peace. So as much as that, like, I agree, the North Korean government is terrible, and I wouldn't want to live under the North Korean regime. Christians are actively persecuted under the North Korean regime, but in the context of um, in the context of I don't know why this is up here. In the context of Romans 13, right, where Paul is writing in a context where Christians are also being persecuted, right? Yet he still is able to say everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities. Governing authorities exist because it's God's mercy upon the people to provide an authority to actually provide order and peace, right? Without the governing authorities, right? Like things like murder, right? If someone went to stab someone in a state of anarchy, there is no way to punish that. There is no way to there's no police force to come in and provide order in that case. And at least in North Korea, right? Yes, it's unfortunate that their government actively controls them, but at the same time, it's a mercy upon them that they do have a governing authority to be able to bring peace and order through them. So yeah, please do like the video. I know that's why I'm not a Calvinist, but I'm just saying God does appoint authorities. He appointed Nero to be judge of us the first century. Why would he do that? Again, it's all according to God's plan. Like I think there are these sorts of things, right? Like I don't think. Okay, sorry. I need to say this a bit more delicately. I think ultimately, right, everything is according to God's plan. There may be some things which we may be confused. Why is it? So it could be it's either that God has actually appointed him, or God has allowed a person to come into power, right? I think with the case with Nero, right, I think an argument could be made either way, right? Because an argument could be made that God did appoint Nero to be the ruler of Rome, or God allowed Nero to be the ruler of Rome, and and it was all part of God's plan and it was part of God's sovereignty to allow that because his plan is much greater. I don't know why God plans certain things, right? I don't know why God plans to do things the way that he does, but I can say this for certain, right? Here in the West, where we do have freedom, right? Where so-called freedom anyway, where we do have the ability to practice our religion, to practice Christianity. Yet in the West, Christianity is in decline. And I can say for certain, like I can bring up so many statistics in places like Iran, in places like China, in places like North Korea, where Christianity is absolutely being the most persecuted. We see the largest growth of Christianity in those countries. In those countries where apparently the persecution is the highest, yet we see the most conversions from those countries. And we see that in the early church as well, right? Where the persecution was the most highest, yet there was an explosion of growth within amongst the Christians there. We saw and eventually, right, to the point where the Roman emperor, Emperor Constantine, then also converts to Christianity. So I don't know why God has a certain plan for certain governing authorities, and why he's allowed certain people to come into power, or maybe actually appointed certain people to come into power. But it's all according to God's plan, and ultimately, if I recently did the video, right, on if God real, why bad thing happen, right? Give me a second. Let's bring it up. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, 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 ba. There you go. And one of the points that I make in this video, right, which is like God allows evil because it's the greater goods can only occur as a result of evil being allowed. And that's one of the things, right, which is like persecution. as as much as I hate to say it, persecution does result in well, there is an association with persecution of the Christian church and the growth of the Christian church, right? So yeah, you're starting to sound like a Catholic. All this talk about appealing to human authority. Well, I'm this is straight from scripture, right? This is straight from scripture that everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, right? I think there are situations, right? There can be a situation where maybe it is a right thing to then rebel against the government. So let's say if the governing authorities then say you must it's time to worship Satan, let's worship Satan, or as it was the case according to the in Rome, right? Like where Christians were forced to worship pagan deities, right? Is that a case where we should submit to the governing authorities, right? Let's put all of scripture in context and say no, right? If the governing authorities are telling you to do something that is actively against God's word, then you shouldn't. That's a case where you should not submit to the governing authorities, right? I think that's a reasonable thing to say, and for you to, if you were to interpret this verse, right, saying like, oh, if the government, so does that mean if the government asks you to kill your wife and children, that means you must do it because this verse is saying submit yourself to the governing authorities? No, like it ultimately is, if the governing authorities are asking you to do something which is in line with God's word, like which is like, for example, do not murder, don't steal, those sorts of things, which are directly aligned with scripture, then of course, yeah, that's even more reason to submit to the governing authorities. So yeah, do I submit to the law that says thou shalt? No, don't. Yeah. So no submission given. Am I a sinner for not submitting? No, you wouldn't be in that case. So that's it. We really need to have a stream about Molinism and middle knowledge. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see about that. All right, cool. So in that context, right? So that's why I'm like, I do want to make that clear, right? Which is like, according to this is the passage. This is the key passage that I always come back to in regards to like whether or not like what is it that our relationship with the state, the Christian's relationship with the state, especially and particularly during a time where the state is actively hostile to Christians. Now, of course, I am happy to be authoritarian as well. Like I think authoritarianism isn't like this bad spooky word that we shouldn't be engaging in, because there are. I think authoritarianism often it often is the case where it's used as a slur against things which aren't actually authoritarian. It's just people try and say, oh hey, this is authoritarian, when it's actually not. It's not authoritarian. It's just that you're criticizing the government doing something. That's all it is. So yeah, what lolberts don't understand is that gooning is not right. For real. And that comes to, and that's why like. I don't want to scroll through the replies because unfortunately people have posted like well, okay, it's to be expected, right? In a post where I'm saying like I want to ban corn, people also posted corn in the replies. So we're not gonna look through those replies. But that was one of the main things. I think it was yeah, that's one of the key base assumptions, right? I think that I kept seeing this comment again and again and again, which is like gooning is my right. Like that's something that people actively say, and I think no, like gooning isn't your right, right? You don't have a right to look at this disgusting stuff, and it is degenerate. Like let's go through. Okay, we kind of know from a Christian perspective, right? Why is gooning bad? It's because sex should be in the context of marriage, right? That's the only appropriate context at which sex should occur in. If it's occurring outside of that, so if you are pleasuring yourself, if you are looking at a woman with lust, those are the sorts of things that those are the reasons why we would say gooning is bad. And you do feel convicted, right? Like it's one of the things that I'm kind of struggling through as well. But like every time I do goon, it's like it feels bad. Like I feel guilty doing it because I like my conscience. My conscience is screaming out to me that I shouldn't be doing this because it's a sin that is against my own body, right? Those who sin maybe all other sorts of sins are sins against other people, yet sexual sin is one that is done against your own body, against your own against yourself. So yeah, those are the sorts of things. Getting rid of corn is the first step to undystopianizing the UK. For real, for real. And that's the thing, right? Like when we think about all of the ways that corn is actually a detriment to human society. Like I can think of all of, like, corn discourages people from engaging in real relationships, right? It traps you in this virtual harem where you're able to pick and choose the fruits of all of what that which you desire, and then because of that you don't have the motivation, or you're less likely to go out and actually engage in a real relationship. When I think about like some other aspects of corn which are really bad, right, which are like it's this unrealistic expectation of women, which you have, right, which is like you are only attracted to a certain type of woman, which is why you especially for for some people who may be addicted to corn, right, and then you watch all of these women do all of these certain things, like do all of these acts, and then you have that unrealistic expectation of real women, and then you go out into the real world and you can't see anything else other than the virtual harm you have built in your mind, right? So yeah. The problem is that the government wants control. I'm all for protecting kids and all, but it's irresponsible parents that are the problem. And this, okay, I want to let's address this straight away, right? So I think it's often the case, right, that conservatives bring up that point that banning corn is all about protecting kids. No, banning corn is about protecting everyone, right? Banning corn is about promoting good families, right? Like it's discouraging vice, so it's discouraging you from committing adultery by looking at another woman that you aren't married to with lust, right? Banning corn is all about protecting the women, right? The women and men who are filming these acts. Like it's all about protecting them, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but like corn is an industry which is incredibly exploitative, particularly towards men and women, particularly towards women, and I'm sure it's also towards the men who are in that industry as well. So yeah, right. It's not just about protecting kids, right? Like we are arguing here that corn is morally bad. Like it's a morally evil thing. That's why we want to ban it, right? We're not banning it to protect kids. We are banning it because it's a morally evil thing. I did post this as well in regards to murder laws, because it's the same reason why we ban murder, right? We ban murder because it's a morally evil thing, right? I want to ban corn because it's a morally evil thing. So like when we're talking about murder laws, people are like, oh, banning murder would only create a black market for murderers. If banning murder is about protecting kids, then it's the parents' responsibility, not the government. And banning murder is actually a slippery slope, because what other things would be banned? Theft? Would theft be banned now? Like so if we were to apply the same logic, like and this is what I'm saying, right? Like I'm not saying we should ban corn to protect, like that's another thing that's added on, right? It's another side effect, which is it's a good side effect to banning corn, that kids are also protected, right? But I want to actively ban corn because it is morally evil. That's what I'm saying. That's the key argument here. So I see YouTube literally posting R34 ads in my YouTube as soon as I canceled YouTube Premium. Oh, that's really rough. And YouTube say ad block is bad. Yeah. Yeah, inappropriate sexual activity captured on video is corn. Yes, true. And yes, producing corn should be criminal offense too. And that's one of the things. So the key Christian advocacy group here in Australia is something called the Australian Christian Lobby, and the argument that, so in regards to let's see, I don't want to call it what it is, because I think YouTube will catch me on that. How do it's so in regards to women selling their bodies for a profit. There you go. That's I can't say what the exact P word is, because it will trigger YouTube's demonetization thing. So in regards to that particular thing, it's what the Australian Christian lobby has advocated for here in Australia is not to punish the women who are selling their bodies, but rather it's to what they're advocating for is to criminalize the purchasing of such services rather than to criminalize the women. Now, that's not to say, of course, like there are women who are entering those industries because they want to do it, right? Like, of course, there are going to be women, right, like that. But you'll kind of see that the reasons why women enter into those positions in the first place are often because they are victims of they're some of them are legitimate victims, right? Because they've been pressured by other men in their life to enter into the into that industry, or it's out of desperation why they're going into that industry, right? So I think that would be that's a thing that could be argued, right? Which is like because I recognize some of the corn which is filmed under circumstances where like the women are being exploited, right? So not really criminalizing the people who are victims in those situations, but criminalizing the act of purchasing or the act of accessing or act of trying to distribute that sort of stuff. Those are the sorts of things that I'd be like that's the model that I would follow in terms of if we were to try criminalizing this sort of stuff. So yeah. What is crazy to me as someone who, thank God, has never visited a corn website because of my of the blessing of strict parents. That's really good. That's so good though. But I am still struggling with lust. 90% of men watch this degenerate behavior. I'm not sure if it's 90%. Well, it could be 90%. Genuinely though, 90% of men who are kind of into that. So yeah. Women are not victims. No, well, I think they ultimately are, right? Like I would differ from this from certain trad people, but I think at the end of the day, like it's these are the sorts of things where women are being exploited for these. And like I'm not denying that there are women who aren't victims and are actively doing it because they enjoy it, right? Like I'm not denying that, right? But there are certain cases where women are exploited, and I want to acknowledge that as well. And criminalizing those women seems like it's an injustice. So yeah. Oh, really? It is 90%? That's insane. Like last time I checked, last time I heard this being talked about, it wasn't 90%. It was something like it was closer to 40 or 50%. So yeah. 75% watch it helplessly, 15 watch it and know it's bad, the rest don't. So yeah. You saw me on Twitter getting dunked on as someone who disagrees with what you've been saying this bill. I wanted to hear you out. I mean, okay. I know this is a common thing that's been said, like, oh, you were absolutely dunked on Twitter. Twitter is something like I want to say, yeah, of course, like there've been like tons of people who don't like this, right? And yes, I do agree. Maybe I have been dunked, but at the same time, right? You can see the reply count. Yep, 1.5 people did disagree with this, but at the same time, 1.8 people did like it, right? This is something that I think we should be that I want to actually change people's minds on. This idea of that we should ban corn, right? And if you are concerned with government censorship, like I wanna bring you back to, oh wait, sorry, I wasn't even showing it, my bad. So there you go, 1.5 replies, which is assuming that they all disagreed with it, like it's pretty safe to assume that, and 1.8 people did agree with it. And so this idea that I've been absolutely dunked, yeah, I have been dunked, but people do agree with this sentiment, right? I wanna bring you back to Romans, what Romans 13 says, right? Which is everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, right? This idea that people talk about like censorship as a slippery slope. I want to say that like censorship is actually there are right cases where we should we should censor. I think this idea of like free speech absolutism doesn't really work in the real world, right? When you talk about, oh, I don't want to say, you know what? I will say terrorism. I don't think YouTube will catch me on that. I'll just say it once so that YouTube doesn't whack me for it. When you talk about that, there's a reason why we should censor it, right? There's a reason why we should censor those sorts of ideas. Like violent speech. Violent speech isn't something that I think falls under free speech. It's like violent speech where you're actively calling for someone's or like for stuff to be done to them. That doesn't fall under free speech. That's the sort of thing that should be censored. There's other things as well, like doxing, for example. Doxing is a perfect example where speech should be restricted in that case. Of course, I don't think we should say like we should then ban hate speech. No, like because hate speech can the definitions for that are can be misconstrued to like censor speech, which is actually not hate speech, but it's like it's just censoring people who are opposing you. So I don't agree with the conception of hate speech, but I agree with some form of censorship, and censorship is a good thing in cases where we are protecting the population from other things. So yeah. I'm talking about artistic expressions in works of art that is definitely going to be affected by bills like this. Now, I got to say this as well. I don't think you need to, if you want to artistically express yourself, you don't need to do it in a corn way. So I hear that argument, right, which is like, oh, it's restricting freedom of expression. I will... You could sorry, no, I'm not gonna bring up like no, I can bring up maybe some communist art, right? So this isn't the best argument in the world, right? Because art was used as propaganda during the in the times of the Soviet Union, right? But I do want to say, right, like that's if we're saying that this is going to restrict artistic freedom and expression, yeah, it might restrict it in a way that you can't make corn anymore. But even in authoritarian regimes, right, art is still something that is still permitted. You can still do. Is it done in a limited way? Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you're still able to do it. That's another thing as well, right? Like we live in a time in history where art is the materials to engage in art and create art are more readily available than they have ever been in human history, right? Like we are living in a like when we're talking about artistic freedom and expression 500 years ago, would we have been talking about that? No, because there was like only one or two people who were artists, and they okay, maybe not one or two people. Maybe it's like a couple of hundred of people who are making art because they're literally the only people who can afford the resources to actually create all of these paintings, or the research, like they can actually afford like a piano, or they can afford like a violin or whatever, right? Or they can afford to go to a school where they can learn how to act and dance and all of those sorts of things. Like this idea of artistic expression is only something which is it's quite a recent thing, mainly because we live in a unique time where artistic the methods and the ability to create art are more readily available than any other point in human history. So I think that's another thing that should be considered, right? Like making art isn't like this great right that we have to be able to create. I think it's we are imaging God by being able to create, but at the same time, like it's not a right that you have, right? Because it's actually it's a great privilege, considering all those years ago that you haven't been able to create art in the first place. So yeah. You've reviewed various anime. What's stopping government bills from calling that corn and justifying that being banned or restricted? And now, like, that's now that sort of argument is like it's done from a place again, like it's so I'll say this for example, right? Let's come back to the let's come back to the murder laws example, right? Which is like we all agree with the idea of murder being banned, right? Because it's a morally evil thing. Now let's come back to corn, right? Corn is a morally evil thing. We should be able to ban it, right? Of course, there's nothing stopping the government from creating new laws that or reinterpreting the definition of murder to expand more and more things to cause the government to just restrict it. It's an unfortunate thing, but this idea of a slippery slope that the government's just going to keep restricting more and more things. I don't think I reject that. That's a I reject that premise, right? Because it's like there are things that the government should be able to restrict, and just because of like some small chance that the government is going to restrict it on the basis that it could call it corn, I think it's a false assumption to make, and it's a bad argument because we already know that this is a morally evil thing. We should be able to continue legislating on it because on that case. It's the same thing in regards to like the murder of children as well. And I'm gonna call it I'm not gonna call it the A word because it's going to be whacked by YouTube, but ultimately that's the thing that that's the same argument which is made against the murder of children in the womb. And yeah, like of course the government has the capacity to over legislate and still like expand definitions, but that doesn't mean we should stop the government from doing that. All that means is that we should just have a change in government, and in a democracy, right, that is something that is able to occur, right, where governments can change and these laws can change. So yeah, Pacios, just so you know, yes, all of my books did come in. All of the books did come in. I've started reading. I am gonna do a book review on it, but I have started reading Dogmas of the Orthodox Church. So there you go. We'll do it. We'll get to it. You have no idea what a real authoritarian regime is capable of, but like again, it's like, oh, authoritarianism bad. We should be for most of human history. We have lived like most of human history, people have lived under monarchies and they lived perfectly fine, right? Like people survived, right? It wasn't as if it was this terrible thing that oh my goodness, look at these poor peasants who lived under a monarch who was really restricting them. Like, it's just if people were able to live under a monarchy for thousands and thousands of years, I don't think it's the end of the world. Like authoritarian, it's not the end of the world, right? Happy Fury, man. I'm glad they all came in safe. Yeah, I will read it at my own pace because I am super busy, but I will get to them. I don't know how long it will take me, but it'll. I think either in November or December when I have more time, I'm gonna dedicate some more time studying that sort of stuff. Because yeah, I'll be doing it. A government has to be authoritarian for it to be work for real. You're Cuban. I like you're. That's a foul. Like that's the what is it? What's the appeal to authority fallacy? Like, oh, I'm a Cuban. That means I know what I'm talking about. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, Overbeast. What about all of the Cubans who do support the government? If the Cuban government is so authoritarian and so bad, why haven't you all rebelled against it? Why hasn't there been a revolution to overthrow the Cuban government if it's so bad and so authoritarian? It's because like obviously most of the population do support the Cuban government, or they're apathetic to it enough that they're not going to revolt against it. And there's like maybe a few detractors who are there's a few people who are like, oh, like this is bad and authoritarianism is bad. I'm just saying it's because they don't have guns. No, well, okay, that's a fair argument that you can make, but at the same time, like I think there are other ways revolutions can occur in other ways that aren't related to guns. So yeah, I'm begging you to learn how authoritarianism actually works. And it's just like, as I said, we have lived under monarchy for thousands and thousands of years. It's not the end of the world. Just because you don't have the ability to goon does not mean you're oppressed. And that's okay. And that's the point I want to I really want to hammer in, right? Which is like, we should be able to have these discussions on what things are morally evil. Because that's the thing. Because is it authoritarianism? And I'll come back to this. Like, is it authoritarianism for the government to like ban murder? No. Is it authoritarianism for the government to ban theft? No, it isn't. Right? Like let's come back to Romans, right? Rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Do you want to be unafraid of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will have his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid. He does not carry the sword in vain. Right? Again, it's like this idea. Governments are here because like God has allowed these governments to has allowed rulers to come and rise to power. It's ultimately they are mistaken, right? They can be mistaken on certain things, and they may abuse that authority. But at the same time, like God has allowed the authorities to exist for a reason, right? And it's the authorities exist as a mercy against anarchy, because anarchy is far worse than authoritarian governments. So authoritarianism, controlling stuff that isn't obviously wrong and doesn't matter. Paleon's Remnant, I would say that you I think you're operating under a definition of authoritarianism which is deeply influenced by like Americanisms and like these ideas of I don't think that's not the definition of authoritarianism that we're arguing against, right? That we're arguing for. I think authoritarianism is this okay, let's see if we can come to a common definition. This is the one that Google's come up, right? So the enforcement of advocacy or strict obedience to authority at the expense of personal freedom, right? And this is actually like this is all the heaven could be and Christianity could be seen as authoritarian because like there is an expectation to obey Jesus, right? So Christianity in itself is authoritarian in a way because like you do have to. That's the ultimate thing about Christianity, which is like it's this obedience to Jesus. But is that such a bad thing to obey authority at the expense of freedom? No, it's not such a bad thing. Particularly, what if the authoritarian government is actually enforcing something good, and you should be following what the authoritarian government is saying because it's a good thing that they're what they're advocating or espousing for. So this idea that like all authoritarian governments are bad, no, like there are authoritarian governments which are good, and we can, and it comes to this idea, right? Like I try to be that's basically your definition as well. Okay, good. It comes back to this idea, right? Of like, can you operate as a Christian in any form of government? And like I've said this before in past streams, right? Which is like, if you are a Christian who is in a democracy or in a capitalist system, like you can still be a Christian. You can be a Christian capitalist. You can be a Christian pro-democrat, right? You can be a pro-democracy Christian. Those things exist. If you want to advocate for those things, and you can operate within the system of democracy to be able to push forward the Christian agenda, and that is a good thing. Can you be like a Christian authoritarian? Yes, you can, right? Like if you are a Christian, and you've been given the power and you've been given the authority of the government. Like let's say you're a Chinese person who converted to Christianity. You kept that Christianity secret, and then you rose through the ranks of the Chinese Communist Party, and then you became the president of China, right? I think you can be a Christian communist, right? Like I think you can be a Christian, work within the communist system and push forward Christian ideas while working within that system. So yeah. Now, can you be a Christian anarchist? And that's the that's the only thing that doesn't quite work. I think you can be a Christian working within. You can still be a Christian in a country which is in a state of anarchy, and still do good things on an individual level. Now, would you have any institutional power? No, not really. But those are the sorts of things. So that's why, or even for the past 1,000 years, right, where Christians worked within systems of monarchy, and you were able to push forward Christian agendas through a monarchical system. So yeah, I advocate for a Christian monarchy within the United States. Yes, I am literally a part of a monarchist party of the United States, and I'm a Christian. Yeah, so there you go. So you can also be you can be a monarchist, right? That's I think monarchy can be that. You cannot be a Christian communist. Christian values cannot coexist with communism. That's impossible. Okay, so all of the things about communism. So there's as far as I'm aware, there's only one thing that communism is directly like oppositional to God, which is like that we shouldn't be engaging in religion. Other than that, everything in communism, I think there are certain ideas in communism, like, and for full context, right? I am pro free markets. I do support capitalism, and I will defend it every day. But if you are a Christian and you want to support communism, or a communist government, or work within as part of a Christian communist government, I don't think that can work, right? When I think about all of the things let's look at what authoritarian communist governments do anyway, which is like authoritarian communist governments, they decide what is produced. It's the government that decides, oh, this should be produced. It's the government that decides the quotas. It's the government that provides you according to your needs. So if you do work, you can do these sorts of things. Or it's the government that provides your housing, or it's the government that provides all of these things. Is that such, like, where in the Bible does it say that Christians should not be operating in a government that provides people with free housing, or sorry, that provides people according to their needs? No, there's nowhere, right? There's nowhere in the Bible that explicitly is against that. Is there a place in the Bible that talks about, like, oh, the government shouldn't be using its power to see if its people are doing that? There's nowhere in the Bible that's against that. So that's why I think, like, you can be a Christian communist. It can work. Like, I think you would have to reform a lot of the parts about communism, which are very anti-God. But I think some of the principles of communism are, you can subvert them in a way that can be more Christian. So yeah. There's been 0 communist governments that have treated Christians well. I'm just saying, no. I'm not saying like individual atheist communists. I'm saying, like, if you are a Christian and want to start like a Christian communist party, right, where you have reformed communism to be more Christian, like, that can work. That's possible, right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like, it's not going to work out for you. I'm just saying, like, it's a possible thing that you can do, if you want to do it, right? Or, as I said, right, if you are someone, like, currently right now, where China is like the fastest growing region where Christianity is absolutely exploding, and it is certainly possibly the case where someone who is part of the Chinese Communist Party, they convert to Christianity, they hide their Christianity for a bit until they rise to power, right? That's also possible, right? Can Christianity exist in like a market socialist economy? Yes, it can. And I'm specific. Okay, sorry. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I would disagree with some of the more ideological aspects of communism, but certainly the economic aspects of communism, like, I think they can be compatible with Christianity. So that's all it is. Charity by law cannot be charity by love, but it's still charity. Like, it's not like, okay, yeah, of course it's not charity by love. Yeah, but it's still a good thing. It's a good thing that the government forces people to give to charity. Like, I don't see why that's wrong. Okay, cool. So Paleon's remnant. That's one aspect where like communism is right. Like like if you are a Christian and wanting to be a communist, that's one thing that you can cut out, right? That's one thing that you can reform about it, right? Um, and that's ultimately the case, right? Which is like we're all living with the assumption that democracy is an inherently good thing, mainly because of the education system, which indoctrinates you into thinking that um, that democracy is like the highest good that we should achieve. Um, so there are tons of things wrong about the democratic system, just as there are tons of things wrong with the communist system, and there are tons of things wrong with the capitalist system as well. So yeah, like this, and I say all of these things because like I've I've studied like Christian socialist movements, maybe not communism. Like okay, maybe communism's a bit too far. Let's take that out of maybe Christian socialism, right? And I think about like people still operating in like socialists in ways which promote socialism, like free healthcare or higher taxation. Is higher taxation an anti-Christian idea? No, it isn't. Is healthcare being provided by the state an anti-Christian idea? No, it isn't. Is it a bad thing economically? And I can argue from an economic standpoint. Yeah, it is. It's a bad idea to tax your people, and it's a bad idea for the state to economically for the state to provide like free healthcare. Like I can make those economic arguments, but is it an anti-Christian idea? Is it an explicitly anti-Christian idea? No, I don't think so. So yeah. Communism teaches that the default state of society, and I get like I agree that all of these things are bad things about communism, right? Paleon, like I agree with that, but is that if you are a Christian and wanting to reform communism, those are the sorts of things that you would be cutting out. Like that's the argument that I'm making. That I think you can be a Christian communist if you got rid of all of the things that made it so anti-God. So see, this is why I'm against banning NSFW, as people could use the same methods to ban Christianity. I'm gonna bring up this verse again, right? Which is like this is why like under we're still it's and as I said, right, as I said with the context of this, even though Paul was writing in the context where he was literally in prison in Rome for being a Christian, yet while he is doing that, he is still saying that there are certain things that the government should be able to do. So yeah, about communism. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't die on the hill of communism. Okay, let's pivot away from communism. Maybe this is more favorable to you. But let's talk about let's maybe talk about like communism in its more moderate approach, which is socialism or democratic socialism, where it's able to still work within a capitalist framework. Like you can still, I think you can still be like a Christian socialist. It's not like not the end of the world. So yeah. And this is and like this is the thing as well, which is like I think ultimately why I think and I say this really in a I say this in a way which might seem scummy. It is kind of scummy when I say it out loud now. But I think like let's imagine this world, right? Which it was a world that existed like 300 years ago, right? Where Christianity continues expanding, and because my theology is more post millennial actually. So for those of you who aren't aware of the difference between like post millennialism and premillennialism, I think it's premillennialism. There's most American Christians subscribe to this idea that the world is going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. Like Satan's going to continue controlling more and more and more things. And at that point, there will be like this great tribulation where Christians are going to be persecuted, and then at that point, like they're going to be raptured up, and then there'll be another more time where the world's going to keep getting way worse, and then at that point Jesus is going to come, and then he's going to defeat Satan, and then that's it, right? For me as a post millennial, right, my theology subscribes to this idea that the world is actually going to become more and more Christian, right? That Christianity is going to keep spreading, right? Christians are going to take control of governments. Christians are going to take control of more and more of the world, to the point that there will be like a one world Christian government, and the church and the state are combined together, and it's at that point where we'll all be raptured up, and then Jesus is going to meet his church, who has now controlled, or has control of the world, and that's how the millennium, like the 1,000-year reign of Jesus, will come. So in terms of that, right, like, so if you're gonna say, oh hey, couldn't the same things that are banning corn be the same? Couldn't the same methods banning corn be the same methods of banning Christianity? Yes, it can be, but in context of my own theology, where I think that the world is going to become more and more Christian, and Christians are going to take control of more and more governments. Yeah, sure. Like if a Christian takes control of a government, and then that government bans corn, you can make that same argument. Like, oh, what if the socialists come to power, and then or what if the communists come to power, and then they ban Christianity? Yeah, that's possible, but again, like you're assuming that you're assuming that the communists are going to come back to power. I'm assuming that Christians are going to stay in power for the rest of eternity until Jesus will come back. So that's yeah. So of course that's certainly possible. But is it a bad thing if Christians are using that power to ban things which are morally reprehensible? Yeah, it's a good thing that Christians are coming into power to ban things which are morally reprehensible. I don't see that as a net bad. So yeah. True, the same methods that ban theft and murder can also ban Christianity. We should totally repeal theft and murder laws. That's so good. Christianity being banned would only help Christians, and that's the thing as well, right? Which is like, if we look at so apparently in the countries where we apparently have the so-called freedom to believe in whatever religion we want, yet Christianity is the fastest, is the most in decline in the West. Yet in countries where Christianity is, you are literally jailed, you are literally killed, your whole family is sent to a labor camp for being Christian. In countries like Iran, China, and North Korea, yet those are the countries in which Christianity is fastest growing, right? So you could make an argument that, oh, these same laws could be used to ban Christianity. Yes. Does it suck for those people who are Christians living under a government which is actively persecuting them? Yes, it does. But we as Christians are faithful to God's plan. That's so much so that maybe for a time that God has allowed that we were persecuted for that time, and that's perfectly fine, because it's within that persecution that the greatest of faith can be developed, the greatest of faith can be created. So much so that faith is a testament to one's children. That faith is a testament to other people, to other Christians around the world who are living more in a country which has greater liberty. And so much so that great faith actually sprouts to even more Christians. And that's the thing we see in authoritarian regimes which do ban Christianity. Is it the end of the world? No. Because we have faith that God has allowed these things to occur, so much so that Christianity will return to these countries. And again, like, the fastest growing churches are in Iran, in China, and in North Korea, places where Christianity is actively persecuted, yet it's the places that are growing the most. So it's like, you can say to me, oh, wouldn't these same things be used to ban Christianity? Yes, they can be, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that because I'm faithful to God that his plan is if his plan is to allow Christianity to be persecuted, maybe it is actually better for the church to experience a time of persecution because it's during a time of persecution where Christians fully lean more into God, like fully lean more into God's provision. And like I'm saying this as a person who's living in a time of great liberty, but I'm saying this because this is the experience, like this is the thing that I hear from stories from like North Korea, China, and Iran. And it might not actually be a bad idea if if these same methods to ban corn are used to ban Christianity. Yeah, sure, because maybe that's what the church needs right now. So it's so there you go. All right. We're near it. We've already passed our hour mark. I think we've just gone over our hour mark. Um so for those of you who are not Christians and you're like libertarians, thank you very much though, guys. If you're doing that, brother, if you really believe all that, you're please just move to China as a missionary. You know, I'm just no, I'm just saying these as like it's these are the sorts of things that that I don't think you've I think if you haven't like heard testimonies from people like from persecuted countries, right, and if you haven't heard the stories from that yet, then I suggest you do look into that because again, like it's you can make these arguments, right, like oh that's my best response, right, that's my best response to the argument that if these same methods to ban corn can be used to ban Christianity, so what, right? Like God's plan is sovereign. Like God is sovereign. God has allowed it to happen. Is that such a bad thing? No, I don't think so because ultimately God's plan will prevail. So yeah, it's not like it's not the end of the world. It's something I can tolerate. And yeah, for those of you who are non-Christians who joined us during the stream, you're of course welcome here. You're always welcome here, and I thank you guys for actually showing up to come in here, and I appreciate that you guys took the time out of your day to come onto the stream to to talk to me about this about this issue. But this is an issue which I like talking about because like it's a thing that I'm passionate about, right? I don't like seeing evil things continue to be allowed, and that's my main motivation, right? Like my main motivation for banning corn isn't so that I restrict your freedom. It's like, of course there's that aspect of restriction of freedom, but like I want to ban corn because it's like it's a morally reprehensible thing, right? Like it is actually evil. It's an evil thing that needs to be removed from this earth. So that's my main reason for it. So of course we can agree to disagree. We do live in a democracy, and we live in a free country, so it's I'm okay to disagree on these matters. So yeah, thanks podcast son, going to bang my head into the wall out of frustration. God bless you though, unironically. Thank you Paleon. Hey, look, like if we all agreed on the same thing, I don't think we'd be like that. These are the sorts of things, right? Like I think these are discussions that are good to be had. So especially amongst those of us who are Christians, because like I'm pretty sure there's no one above the age of 30 on the stream right now, which is why I think like we're the people who are eventually going to vote people in. We're like, some of us may be politicians, some of us might rise to power in these sorts of places. So yeah, that's it. All right, with that, thank you very much for joining today's stream. If you haven't followed me on Twitter yet, please do so. My username is ChristianAnniePod. Very, very based. I'm not sure if I'll stream tomorrow. You'll see it come out. But and this is the new stream time as well. Sorry, I have to see it. What is EST? No, it should be the opposite. So new time for streaming for me. I've decided to start streaming at 7 a.m. Australian Western Standard Time, so that I don't lounge about in bed. That's actually one of my big motivations for streaming earlier than usual. It's because I noticed on days where I would stream at like at 8 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. I noticed I would stay in bed. So I would wake up at 6. I would stay in bed longer, and then I wouldn't get anything done for like those full 2 hours. And then I would stream, right? So that's my main motivation as to why I want to. I'm actually happier streaming at 7 a.m. because that means I have to wake up at 6 a.m. and I only have an hour to mess around with, and then then I have to go to stream. So yeah, so it'll be like 7 p.m. EST, and I don't know what's the time Los Angeles. What's PST time? And it'll be 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So there you go. All right. God bless everyone. I hope you all take care of yourself. See ya. See ya.